Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got a rather interesting idea to run. We're no stranger to testing shells that aren't technically turkey shells for turkey applications, but today's combination is something pretty out there. I guarantee you ain't nobody else tried this yet, so ultimately we really don't know what's going to happen until we actually test it, but there is a non-zero chance that we get some rather surprising results here from these shells through this combo based on what we've already seen from them in other testing we've done. So first up, for the shells that we're running today, I brought out some of these. Yes, these are some Federal Personal Defense 410 handgun loads that we're going to be patterning for turkey hunting. They are a 410 2.5 inch 7/16 ounce payload of lead 4s that are also copper plated, moving about 950. Now, it's actually a little higher than that from our shotgun platform, since that's a rated velocity for a handgun orientation. Now, immediately, I already see the comments right here, right now. Why would you ever run these for turkeys? That's a terrible idea. You would never do it, you know, yada, yada, yada. Now, to each their own. Obviously, I think we can all agree that this is not an ideal turkey shell. There are far better options out there in 410 than what this will ever be. 2.5 inch lead 4 in a 410 shell, not a lot of payload to work with, but that doesn't mean they can't pattern well and be perfectly capable of doing the job. And it's interesting because we have tested these in their actual defensive application through a cylinder bore choke in a shotgun, the same gun we're running today actually. They were actually impressive performers through no choke at all. 20 yards, we were seeing turkey patterns from a cylinder bore. So they may legitimately surprise us, and none of us know what they're going to do until we actually try it. So will they be a 20, 25, 30 yard capable combination? Will they extremely surprise us and be able to do it out at 40? I have my doubts at that range with simply just the pellet count alone, but we'll see what happens, because I think we're in for a little bit of a surprise if everything works out the way I think it should, considering how wild this combination and idea actually is. For the setup we're running, I brought out my Mossberg 500 410. It's got a Simmons red dot on top, a 24 inch barrel, and the choke we're going to be running is the Trulock 385 constriction turkey choke. This has been about the best middle of the road consistent performer with pretty well everything we've ever put through it. So we've got a good turkey choke. Is it too much constriction for a lead 4 and a 410? I don't know, but we'll start here. It's a safe bet and we'll see what happens. So as for our test today, we're going to be taking 3 shots, one at 20, one at 30, and ideally one at 40. If we're already seeing horrendous results at 30, we may go back to 25, but the goal is 20, 30, and 40. Obviously, we're pushing our luck here. We're doing something that's already not ideal with a shell that's not designed to do this. So we'll see as we go into it what we're actually getting, because it may be absolutely terrible. And of course, I've got the chronograph as well, so we can be getting our velocities, because they will be a good bit higher than the 950 claim from our shotgun. So let's get you guys a view of these targets. We'll start at 20 and work our way out in distance and see what we get. We may legitimately be surprised, or we may find out very quickly just how limited this combo is. It's a wild idea that could work, so let's take some shots and see what we actually are able to get. Okay, so pause it right here. I'll jump in voiceover and give you guys the rundown. I immediately knew, judging by that pattern right there, that we are over constricting these shells by quite a bit. That 385 is just too much choke, and I knew that there was no way that we're ever going to be able to carry a pattern to any sort of distance with this combo. So I made a quick change in how we were going to run it. I grabbed my regular flush full choke for that gun, which is a 391 for a constriction, so a little bit less choke. I figured that would give us a little more breathing room and help us out some. So we threw that in the gun. We still kept the same distance at 20 yards, and that ended up giving us this pattern. Now that's more like it. Obviously, still very limited with pellet count, but we actually have a condensed core area now, like I was expecting to see. So the less constriction with that 391 full absolutely helped us out. So I figured what we'll do, we'll take the best of these two chokes, that obviously being this flush full choke, and then we'll push it to 30 yards and see what it gives us at that distance, because 40 yards is probably pretty optimistic at best. So we kept the flush full in the gun, stepped it back to 30 yards, and took our third shot. Okay, so quick look at our velocities before we look at our targets. The box was claiming 950, but like I said earlier, that's from a handgun platform. We're running it from a 24-inch barrel and a shotgun. We're going to see notably higher velocities, and that's exactly what happened. Our Trulock choke gave us 1348, then the 20-yard full choke shot gave us 1360, and the 30-yard full choke shot gave us 1384, so mid to upper 1300s. That's about typical for what I expected out of these. I knew that they were north of 1300 from a shotgun, so plenty enough velocity here if we have the patterns to back it up anyway. Okay, well, here we have our three targets, and by now I would have already explained in voiceover and editing what we had to do since we kind of switched it up mid-test here. After seeing what the Trulock choke gave us at 20 yards, I pretty much already knew that it was over-constricted and it just wasn't going to hold up. I think our 40-yard pattern was going to be a massive reach at best, so I'm okay with running the Trulock versus our stock full choke at 20 and then taking the best of those two and moving them to 30 and seeing how it holds up, which is what we did here. And I think this is a little bit better telling of what's actually going on, because clearly, again, we're doing something that probably nobody else has ever tried or thought about trying with a shell that's not designed to do it and is about the least ideal combo you can really ask for in a turkey setup. But we do still see some pretty interesting results here. First, we'll start at 20 yards here. We've got our Trulock 385 on the left and our stock full choke on the right. The stock full measures right at 391 constriction, so a little less choke, and I think that absolutely helped our pattern some. Judging by what we saw with the Trulock, I figured I'll throw the stock full back in it, see what happens, and it definitely tightened our core down noticeably. But first we'll look at the Trulock 385 up close. This is 20 yards. We do indeed have a dead turkey here. There are 1 and kind of a half up there in the front of the brain and another 1 or 2 or 3 down the spine there in the middle that would have absolutely taken that bird. But you can see the complete lack of pellet count we have in these shells. If you're gonna hunt turkeys with lead in a 410, which is not ideal at the best of times, at least run a 6, if not a 7.5, and keep it to 30 yards and in. Those are much better choices than a 4. Although we've got over 1300 feet per second with a copper plated lead 4. Doesn't matter if it's from a 12 gauge or a 410. The energy, the penetration, the terminal performance per each pellet is still there. So dead bird, but it clearly is not as good as what we had previously seen even through a cylinder bore with these shells. So I already knew we started blowing our edges open a little bit there, but the pellets we do have, no real core to it. Figured let's throw the full choke in and see what that can do. And sure enough, here we have our full choke. It definitely tightened our core down right around that bird's head. We've got a bunch of them right through the back end of the neck there. It would have absolutely done the job. And there's nowhere he can move to left or right and get through that spread. So 20 yards, not a big ask for a lot of shells in general. You can kill a turkey with almost anything at 20 yards using pretty much whatever shell you want, but it would certainly do the job, and we condensed our spread down some. We still have our few flyers around the edges and stuff. No real surprise there, but that is much more like it. It's still extremely limited. I don't think any of us are going to argue with that. And most people still would never think about using that pattern, even at 20 yards or so. But technically speaking, it would indeed work. So already our 391 full choke was the better option, clearly. So I figured let's step it out to 30 yards, which was probably going to be the realistic max anyway in the best case scenario, and we'll see what it can do there, which is now this pattern. Do we have a dead turkey? Yes, I believe we do. We definitely have one that hit spine in the center of the neck and two more kind of up a little higher that might have just barely clipped something in there. So dead turkey? Probably so, but you can see we're jumping past the limitations already. If I was to ever think about running these shells for turkeys, I probably wouldn't push my luck any farther past about 20 yards or so. Maybe 25, you'll be a little more reliable than 30 yards is, but 20 yards and in, if you wanted to ever run this shell for one reason or another, that's gonna kind of be the limitations, it looks like, because we still have a bunch of stuff scattered all over the place, and the farther distance we get, the worse that pattern is going to open up. Even a 3-inch load of lead 4s would have more pellets in it than what we have here. This is only a 7/16 ounce load, which is a little less than half an ounce. Not very many pellets. So I think this did about predictable for what a lot of us thought it would. Still not a bad pattern, all things considered, for what the shell is, but as far as turkeys go, 20 yards with a full choke is about my limitation. So let's pull the targets down, we'll count some pellets. I don't think there's going to be much to see that we haven't already seen, but we'll at least take a look at it and see what the numbers are. All right, I apologize for the glares. We've reached that point in the afternoon where there's not much I can really do about it, but we'll look up close at them here in a second anyway. Got all of our turkey targets pulled down, got pellets circled and counted, and yep, we can really see what we were looking at a second ago, although there's not many pellets to look at in general. Starting over here with our two 20-yard patterns, Trulock 385 on the left, the full 391 on the right. The full choke is definitely the better pattern for sure, because here we have our Trulock. Inside of our 10-inch circle, we have 29 pellets. Outside of that, in our 20-inch circle, we pick up an additional 23 pellets with a couple outside the very edges of it as well. But you can see kind of just shot on paper. Not any super dedicated core area. I definitely think 385 is a little too much choke for what these want. It is a lead 4 and a 410. I'm sure they're going to be a little bit finicky to really tighten down the pattern, although that's not entirely what these shells are technically designed to do. I mean, it would be an okay small game pattern, squirrel pattern, something like that, rabbits. It would work just fine for that, but it's not quite as good as what we saw with our full choke. That now being this pattern. Inside of our 10-inch circle, we have 34 pellets compared to 29 with the Trulock. So we gained 5 pellets, but it looks like we condensed our core down quite a bit more there. We actually have a dedicated hot zone in the middle of the pattern. Outside of that, with our 20-inch ring, we pick up 22 additional pellets compared to 23 with the Trulock. So 1 pellet difference there, nothing major to speak of. But the core is definitely better with the full choke. And that's why I decided to push the full choke out to 30 yards, because it was definitely not as blown open, which is now this pattern. This is our full choke 391 constriction at 30 yards. We now have 22 pellets inside of our 10-inch core compared to 34 at 20 yards. And we have 19 within the 20-inch ring compared to 22 at 20 yards. So a little more open of a pattern. We're not terribly far off as numbers go. In our 20-inch ring, our 10-inch core is definitely thinner. No surprise there. And we started picking up more pellets here and there around the outer edges as well. No surprise. That would still be an okay small game combination, rabbits, squirrels or something. You don't have a massive pellet count to work with, but those animals, you get a pellet or two in them and it will do the job just fine. For turkeys though, I probably wouldn't tell you to push it to 30 yards. 20 yards and in, that's going to be the limitations. And with a lead 4 at over 1300, if you put several of them through the head and neck at 15 yards or so, that turkey's going to be dead right then and there. So overall, looking at this performance here, I was hoping maybe we could get a little more impressive result, but I'm not entirely surprised either. We're trying to do something that was never intended to be done with these shells. So it was a wild idea that was kind of way out in left field, and I guarantee you nobody else has tried it. But hey, now we all know, or at least have an idea on exactly how capable these are. It obviously would not be my choice to run for turkeys in a 410. There are way better choices. Lead in a 410 is limited at the best of times, but at least a number 6, or better yet a 7.5, is a much better choice within 30 yards. Just higher pellet count to work with. But nonetheless, pretty interesting results, even if they might not light the pattern board up. It's still fun to test things like this and just see what happens if nothing else. And here are the wads from those shells. You have your Trulock choke on the left here. You can see how much more torn up that wad is. Definitely looks like we're over constricting them with that 385, because here we have our full choke wads. They're still torn up. We're still missing a pedal here and there. That's kind of what we've seen from these style wads across the board, really. But it definitely handled it a little bit better. A little less constriction, I think, worked out in our favor. So nothing special to see here. Did about how I thought it would as far as the wads go anyway. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about this test right here? Maybe a little bit pointless in some aspects, maybe not in others. It's an interesting and fun idea to run anyway. I definitely like branching way out in left field and trying these crazy ideas sometimes. They can sometimes work out in our favor, other times not so much. Overall, I think this went about predictably how I thought it would. I might have hoped to see a little bit better, and maybe coming into it, 40 yards was really pushing our luck. I didn't expect to have a fantastic pattern at 40 yards, but with the pellet count we have, it's just not gonna reliably happen. It would be a complete gamble to take that shot, and I would never do it myself, and I wouldn't suggest you do either. You saw how limited we were even at 30 yards. So if for whatever reason you're ever gonna run these combos for turkeys, seems like maybe a full choke or so at 20 yards and in is gonna be about your best bet right here. That's not a terrible pattern for what it is. But turkey-wise, there's way better options out there. If you're going to run lead in a 410, just run at least a 6, if not a 7.5. It's a way better idea to do that. But still, pretty interesting and at least fun to try stuff like this and see what it might actually be capable of doing for us, even if it really doesn't serve any purpose in the grand scheme of things. Because I highly doubt any one of you guys has ever thought about or contemplated running these shells for turkeys. Maybe if you've seen our previous defensive tests with them, you would have thought, what can those do for turkeys? Just like I did. But that's about as far as we've got with it, I would say. But you can let me know all your thoughts down below. Is this about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these personal defense 410 loads? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Or have you run them for turkeys or patterned them through a little bit tighter choke than a cylinder bore? And what kind of results have you gotten from them? Is this a combination you would ever actually turkey hunt with? I kind of doubt it, but maybe one of you guys might want to try it just for a fun challenge at some point. And let me know what other testing you might want to see with either lead in a 410 for turkeys, or what else do you want to see us do with these shells? I've still got a handful of them left, so maybe there's another idea or another choke combo you might want to see us try with them. Let me know all your thoughts down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox. You can send stuff if you'd like. All the information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.